Welcome to the video that's going to expose the dirty little secret trait that all successful entrepreneurs have. And really many unsuccessful ones have too. When you learn what it is, it might surprise you at first, but in the end, it'll make a lot of sense. First, let's talk about this video. There are 5 sections to it. We're going to start with a discussion as to how I figured out what this trait is by looking at my own entrepreneurial failures. After that, we'll talk about the trait itself and how it manifests. After that, we'll look at how can you actually come up with this trait if it's something you don't inherently have. After that, there's a funny little insight I have as to how I knew that I was actually acquiring this trait. And finally, we're going to come up with the philosophical question is this a trait you really want to acquire? In early 2017, 4 years ago as of the making of this video, I found myself once again looking to launch a new business. Since I had done that before, sometimes failing and sometimes with moderate success, I wondered what could I do to increase the likelihood of a positive outcome. Fortunately, I was about to become an empty nester. That meant no family breadwinner constraints. Still, I knew I was different than other founders and also knew that finding out why would be a big help. I had worked for numerous startups and closely interacted with many more. I augmented all those experiences by reading up on many of the behind-the-scenes stories on companies that grew from nothing. And I thought to myself, why did I fail where someone else might succeed? Why was I giving up and they weren't? Was it money, ability, time, or something else? Which then led me to this startling realization. I simply wasn't desperate enough. Yep, that's it. All successful entrepreneurs have this desperate need to prove themselves. Like some kind of modern economic Napoleon, they feel inferior and need to show everyone else that they're better, that they're smarter, they're stronger, they're more business savvy, whatever it is, and starting up a company is a great way for them to do that. And here are the advantages this drive provides them. First, it drives people to start their own companies. After all, what better way to prove yourself? You can't easily do that working for someone else. Second, it gives you that drive. It's an almost forced perseverance. It pushes you to keep trying and when absolutely necessary, adapt, because success becomes more important than ego. In fact, it is how they measure ego. Third, and this is key, it makes you do something you might not want to do, so nothing is left out. Unfortunately, this area gets dicey for some, and allows them to do morally and ethically questionable things, and sometimes stuff that is downright illegal. By the way, this last element was my weak point. Necessary roles I detested. The question for me then became, how can I become desperate if I'm not inherently that way? Marketing and sales were never my strong points. Included in that was my loathing to ask others for money. That presented a conundrum. If I couldn't do the sales and generate enough revenue to self-fund, I was going to have to seek investors. So my plan was to become desperate enough to push myself to get sales going. In 2017, while still working, I got my money situation in order. I refinanced my house, and I also got a home equity line of credit that I was going to use to bootstrap for as long as possible. Then I left my job, and hopefully the 2 years that I had roughly gained would give me enough time to both create a product and generate some sales. The next 4 years were a typical topsy-turvy startup period. It includes having to extend my bootstrapping period, going into foreclosure, getting out of it from contract work and help from a relative, but eventually creating a product, my mental wellness app, that is the vehicle I know I can ride to success. However, not enough time had elapsed so that I could get traction. Fortunately, desperation pushed me to get comfortable with raising money. So much so that I honed a pitch deck and began actively showing it around, which leads to an interesting insight. So you may be wondering, how did I know that my artificial desperation trick was working, besides the obvious, the fact that I was actually having conversations with angel investors? Here's how I knew. We can't know what our subconscious is thinking. After all, it is our subconscious. However, there are 2 ways that we can actually try and figure out what might be going on. One is during our waking hours, and the other is when we're sleeping. During our waking hours, our subconscious is constantly processing information like our awareness does, drawing conclusions and intermittently making us feel things. Emotions are the result of our subconscious communication scheme. While we can never know what our subconscious is thinking and why it's drawing conclusions, over some period of time we can look at the patterns. What emotions are we feeling and what's happening around those emotions? And we can kind of reverse engineer what might be going on. However, keep in mind that it's our subconscious, so it's not like these high-level stuff that our higher-level reasoning goes through. In fact, the stimuli are going to be a lot more basic and a lot more primitive. During our sleeping hours, pattern recognition is a little easier, as it's all about us. No outside world interfering. However, it's also not realistic per se, because we don't have the confines of the physical world. Dreams are our subconscious playing out potential real-world vulnerabilities in a sandbox. Those weak points can be physical, or in the case of the modern world, where a person is normally safe, emotional vulnerabilities. I put dreams into 3 categories. The first is stuff we're doing but maybe shouldn't. Our subconscious is, appropriately, questioning whether or not there is something we are missing, especially if it is picking up on the reactions of others and our awareness isn't. The second is stuff we're not doing but probably should be. Again, the subconscious is getting some feedback, which can include questioning feelings that are enabling our inaction and wondering if we should be doing or saying something. The third area occurs when we question either of the first 2 and then try to change them. In this case, our subconscious is both trying to confirm that we made the right move, but also fighting the old way, even if that was not desirable. These were the dreams that I was having. I was dressed inappropriately and trying to hide that fact in some dreams. In others, I was outright performing illegal activities like trying to attack law enforcement. In both cases, my guess was that my dreams were telling me that I was so outside my comfort zone that my subconscious maybe thought I was going in the wrong direction when I really wasn't. Thanks to my regular sanity checks, which included my talking to other people, and my standard, rigorous critical thinking, I knew that I could kind of dismiss what was going on in these wacky dreams. In fact, they were telling me I'm getting used to something new that I need to get comfortable with. Let's get to the last question. Do you really want to put yourself in a position, make yourself desperate, so that you can hopefully successfully launch a startup? If your response is, of course I do, I want you to seriously consider the state of your mental health. My business taught me that people tend to fall on one end of the emotional issue spectrum. You have the givers. They do for others and, as a result of their shortcomings, eventually become drained and seek therapy. This is the traditional bunch we think about around mental health, and often those who make entrepreneurs successful. Then you have the takers. They do for themselves, which means they tend to exact a price from all those around them. Entrepreneurs fall squarely into this group. So if you do want to start your own and don't foresee pain, consider the fact that you'll be delegating and frankly requiring those around you to take the pain for you. Do you want to be that person? Because trust me, starting any business is really painful. If you are in that other camp, the camp that I was in, and you're kind of like, I don't know if I have what it takes to be a successful leader. You may be able to take consolation in the fact that you might be a rare selfless leader, where, yeah, other people are taking the plunge, but they're doing it knowingly and you're communicating with them. And more importantly, you're also sharing the success with them. If you are willing to disrupt your life, in my case, I've done it for more than 4 years, to push to achieve something, make sure it's more than just a better mousetrap. We don't have enough mice in the first place. Let them live. But if you are doing something that is actually in the public good, then by all means, share the load. That means the responsibilities, the pain, but also the successes and the reward. After all, that's how we were meant to work together. We were meant to collaborate for the benefit of all. We need to stop the economic hoarding in which billionaires engage. We need to stop celebrating success in business at all costs. We need to remember the human element and acknowledge the fact that it takes many people for any enterprise to get off the ground. And if we're just standing on their backs, are we really off the ground anyway? If you have a question, please leave a comment. And if I don't respond, please feel free to shoot me an email. I will respond to them for as long as is humanly possible. Thanks for listening, good luck, and peace.